A fresh egg sinks, an old egg floats. That is not a folktale, that is physics. And the egg industry has known it for over a century, while making sure it never appeared on a single carton anywhere in the world. Here is what is actually inside that egg. Not the yolk, not the white. There's a pocket of air sitting at the wide end, sealed between two thin membranes. When the egg is first laid, that pocket is almost nothing, barely a sliver of space. But as days pass, something starts happening that nobody at the grocery store ever explains. The shell looks solid. It is not. There are roughly 7,000 microscopic pores across the surface of a single egg. 7,000 tiny openings in what looks like a sealed object. Through those pores, carbon dioxide and moisture that are naturally trapped inside slowly bleed out into the surrounding air, every day, every hour, without stopping. And as those gases leave, the air pocket at the wide end grows to fill the vacuum they left behind. Day 1, the pocket is almost invisible. Day 7, measurably larger. Day 20, the egg starts to tilt in water, the wide end pulling upward slightly. Day 45, it floats. Not because the egg went bad, because that is the physics of what time does to a sealed, porous object full of biological gas. The air pocket is the clock. And dropping the egg in water reads that clock in about 4 seconds. No equipment, no app. 4 seconds and a glass of water. A test that predates refrigeration, predates industrial farming, predates every date code and grading standard ever invented. That is the mechanism. That is thread A. Thread B is the part nobody put on the label. The air cell test, formerly called air cell measurement and depth grading, has been used in professional egg evaluation since the early 1900s. It was not invented by a food blogger. It was not discovered by accident in someone's kitchen. It was codified into official regulatory standards by the United States Department of Agriculture as part of their shell egg grading system. Grade AA, the premium egg on the shelf, has an air cell less than 1/8 of an inch deep. That is a very fresh egg. Grade A, the egg filling the majority of grocery store shelves across the entire country, has an air cell up to 3/16 of an inch. Grade B, with a larger air cell still. The grading system is a formal documented measurement of how old the egg is. This has been regulatory knowledge for decades, taught in food science programs, written into commercial procurement contracts, used by every major professional buyer in the food industry. The government agency that sets these standards publishes them openly. The grading manual is available to anyone. The air cell depth thresholds are listed by the fractions of an inch. All of this is public record. All of it describes exactly what the float test reads for free in a kitchen, and not one word of it appears on the consumer carton. If you enjoy understanding how the world actually works beneath the surface, subscribe. It is the best way to support this work. Drop in the comments what city or country you are watching from. This script draws on USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, shell egg grading standards, and peer-reviewed research published in the Journal of Food Science. Now back to it. What is on the carton is a sell-by date, or a best-by date, or a use-by date, depending on which country you live in, which retailer packed the box, which regional regulation applied that season. That date can mean something completely different. In the United States, eggs can legally sit in a commercial warehouse for 30 days after being packed before they are even loaded for distribution. After that, retailers have another 30 days to sell them off the shelf. That is 60 days of potential transit and shelf time before a consumer ever touches the carton. 60 days. A float test on that egg would show it tilting hard, maybe floating outright. But the date on the front of the box might still read as fresh. The pores are part of why the clock runs the way it does. And here is where the system gets deliberately complicated. A freshly laid egg does not leave the hen without protection. In the final seconds of laying, the hen deposits a thin protein coating over the shell. It is called the cuticle, sometimes called the bloom. This coating partially seals the pores. It slows the gas exchange. It is the egg's own built-in preservation mechanism, produced biologically, applied at zero cost, requiring no machine and no chemical. In most of Europe, eggs sold in grocery stores are unwashed. The cuticle stays intact. The pores remain partially sealed. Shelf life extends naturally. Refrigeration at the point of sale is often not even required. In the United States, and in every country that adopted the same industrial processing model, eggs are washed, at scale, in large facilities with warm water, rotating brushes, and detergent-based sanitizers. The washing process removes surface bacteria. It also removes the cuticle completely. Every pore on the shell surface is now wide open. The carbon dioxide and moisture that would have bled out slowly through a partially sealed shell now bleeds out faster. The air pocket that the float test reads grows faster. The clock accelerates. And to compensate for stripping away the natural barrier the egg came equipped with, processors at every major packing facility spray the cleaned shell with a thin film of food-grade mineral oil, an industrial substitute for the biological coating that was just washed off, applied by machine at volume. every single day. The industry built a system that removes the egg's natural protection, then reinserts an artificial version of that protection, then ships the egg in a carton that does not mention either of those steps happened at all. This is not a secret buried in classified documents. It is infrastructure. The washing process genuinely reduces contamination risk. The mineral oil genuinely slows gas exchange. These are real technical decisions with real technical rationale. The problem is not that the process exists. The problem is that it alters how the egg ages, changes how fast the air pocket grows, and therefore changes exactly what a float test would tell a consumer about freshness. And none of that context was ever considered worth a sentence on the label. Think about what that means structurally. 2 eggs, same farm, same flock, same week. 1 egg washed and oiled by an industrial processor in a country that mandates that process. 1 egg unwashed in a country that prohibits washing. Both eggs sitting on a grocery shelf with a sell-by date stamped on the front. The washed egg has open pores and a mineral oil barrier, slowing down what is now an accelerated process. The unwashed egg has a biological barrier doing the same job naturally. The gas exchange rates are different. The air pocket growth rate is different. A float test on each of those eggs at the same calendar age would potentially give different readings, because the aging physics are different. Nowhere on either carton does it say which process was applied. Nowhere does it say which country's standard governs what is inside. The date on the front treats both eggs identically. The water in a glass would not. The float test itself is almost insultingly simple. Fill any container with cold water. Place the egg in gently. If it lies flat on the bottom, the air pocket is small, the egg is fresh, the gas exchange has barely started. If it tilts upward at the wide end but still touches the bottom, the pocket has grown, the egg is older, still perfectly edible for most purposes, but the clock is running. If it stands fully upright on the bottom with the wide end pointing straight up, the egg is getting older, use it soon. If it floats completely, the air cell is large, weeks of gas exchange have happened, and whether it is still safe depends on factors beyond buoyancy alone. The float test does not tell you the egg is dangerous, it tells you the egg is old. Those are not the same statement. A floating egg is not automatically rotten. A sinking egg is not automatically pristine. But the test gives you more real information in 4 seconds than the sell-by date gives you in any amount of reading time. What the float test does not tell you is the exact number of days. It tells you a range. Small air pocket, very fresh. Medium pocket, 1 to 3 weeks. Large pocket, over a month. Floating, significantly aged. That range is more than the carton gives. The carton gives you a final date with no information about how close to that date the egg already is when you buy it. The float test gives you the actual current state of the egg, regardless of what date was printed, regardless of how long it sat in a warehouse, regardless of what country packed it or what regulations governed its label. The water is the honest party in this transaction. The water has no reason to lie. The yolk tells the same story from the inside. A fresh egg cracked onto a flat surface shows a yolk that stands up round and high, surrounded by a thick, gel-like ring of white. That height is structural. It comes from the 2 protein strands called the chalazae. Tight, elastic, anchoring the yolk centrally between both ends of the shell membrane. As the egg ages, those strands weaken. The yolk drifts. The white thins and spreads. When you crack an old egg, the yolk flattens immediately, spreads outward, sits nearly level with the white. That is not preference. That is the same biological aging clock the float test reads, visible from a different direction. The air pocket grows from the outside in. The yolk posture collapses from the inside out. Both are measuring the same thing. Professional kitchens know this. Hotels ordering eggs for breakfast service specify pack date on their procurement contracts, not sell-by date. Large food manufacturers buying eggs for industrial processing request lay date documentation and facility certification. They know what the numbers mean. They know the functional difference between a 4-day-old egg and a 42-day-old egg in terms of protein behavior, yolk integrity, and performance under heat. That information exists. It circulates freely between producers and commercial buyers. The consumer buying the identical product from the same facility simply does not receive it. There's a reason fresh eggs are harder to peel when hard-boiled. It is the same system. In a very fresh egg, the inner membrane adheres tightly to the egg white. That tight adhesion makes the shell difficult to remove cleanly without tearing the white underneath. An older egg, with a larger air pocket and a slightly more separated membrane, peels almost perfectly. Professional cooks know this. They deliberately use older eggs for hard boiling. The air pocket that the float test reads is also the gap that makes the shell separate cleanly. 2 completely different kitchen observations, pointing at the same biological clock, neither of which was ever printed on the carton. There is a code on almost every commercial egg carton that almost nobody knows how to read. It is a 3-digit number called the Julian date. It runs from 001, representing the 1st of January, all the way to 365, representing the 31st of December. That number is the day of the year the eggs were packed into the carton, not the day they were laid, not the day they were shipped, the day they were packed. If the number reads 210, those eggs were packed on the 29th of July. If you were standing in a store on what the Julian calendar records as day 255, 45 days have passed since packing. The air pocket in every egg in that carton has been growing for 45 days minimum. The float test would show that immediately. The carton does not. That code has been required on commercial egg packaging in the United States for decades. It is printed on the end of the box, or the side panel, or the lid flap. It is not hidden. It is just small, unlabeled, and never explained to the person reading it. The sell-by date printed large on the front of the box is calculated from that Julian number, extended by the maximum duration regulations allow, designed to give retailers the longest possible window to move product off the shelf before it comes back as waste. The float test predates all of this. It predates modern refrigeration, industrial washing facilities, mineral oil coating, Julian date codes, and sell-by labeling regulations. Farmers were using water displacement to assess egg freshness long before any of those systems existed. The physics does not require laboratory. The air pocket does not need a government code to communicate what it knows. Water tells you what 40 pages of packaging regulations choose not to. Here is the number that makes this concrete. Global commercial egg production exceeds 1 trillion eggs every single year. 1 trillion. Every one of those eggs is porous. Every one of them is aging from the moment of laying. Every one of them has an air pocket growing measurably, predictably, testably with each passing day. The test that reads that pocket takes 4 seconds and costs nothing. It has been documented in official grading standards for over 100 years. It appears in every serious food science reference on egg quality in every language. It is taught to every professional egg grader on their first day of training. The chemistry textbooks cover it. The agricultural university programs cover it. The USDA grading manual covers it. The food technology journals cover it. It was never put on a carton, not in a single country, not by a single major producer, not once across the entire modern history of commercial egg retail. The information existed. The physics was understood. The test was simpler than any date code or grading label ever devised. And the same industry that grades eggs by air cell depth, that trains commercial buyers to request eggs by pack date, that applies mineral oil specifically because it slows the exact same gas exchange the float test measures, never once considered printing a single sentence about any of it on the box sitting in your refrigerator right now. Every household has water. Every household that buys eggs has, at this exact moment, everything needed to read an egg's actual biological age. Not the age the packaging was designed to communicate, but the real age, measured in gas exchange and air pocket depth and the physics of a porous shell. The float test does not care what country printed the regulations. It does not care what the label says. It does not negotiate with marketing. The egg floats, or it does not. Now, here is the late detail. When an egg is refrigerated, the gas exchange slows down dramatically. Cold temperatures reduce the rate at which carbon dioxide bleeds through the pores. The air pocket still grows, just much more slowly than at room temperature, which means an egg that has spent 30 days refrigerated will have a smaller air pocket than an egg that spent 30 days at room temperature. The float test accounts for this automatically. The physics adjusts. The water reads the actual current state of the air pocket. Not an estimate based on calendar time, but a sell-by date cannot adjust for temperature history. It does not know whether the eggs were properly refrigerated during transport, whether they sat on a loading dock in summer heat for 3 hours, whether the back of the retail shelf is colder than the front. The date is fixed. The physics is responsive. Only one of those is telling you the truth about what is currently inside the shell. There is one more thing. When an egg ages past the point of safety, when bacterial contamination has actually occurred, the float test does not reliably detect it. A contaminated egg can still sink. A very old but uncontaminated egg will float. The float test is a freshness test, not a safety test. This distinction matters because it is exactly the nuance the industry would have had to explain if they ever put the test on the label. And explaining that nuance would have required explaining the whole system, the air pocket, the gas exchange, the washing, the mineral oil, the Julian date, the 60-day window. It would have required telling the consumer what grade A actually means in terms of air cell depth. It would have required explaining that professional graders measure the same thing with a light and a ruler that a consumer could measure with a glass of water. The label would have had to become honest. That was apparently more complicated than printing a date. The air cell grading standard that defines a grade AA egg was published in 1923. If this changed how you see something you thought you already understood, subscribe. Every video goes this deep. We will see you in the next one.